Svitlana. There I see two of the coolest chess player names ever in the history of chess. It's Karpov and Kasparov. What awaits us? I'm curious.
Yeah, today I wanted to take us to a historical game that we can learn a lot from,
Nice.
and it's a game between Karpov and Kasparov. And
Perfect.
in this game, there's so many themes, but there's how to restrict opponent's pieces, how to attack, and even the concept of the octopus knight, if you've heard of it before. But also, this is just always interesting to see a Karpov Kasparov game because it's one of the biggest rivalries that we've seen in the chess world. Do you like any of these former world champions in particular? Do you have a favorite among them?
I do not, but of course, I have witnessed a couple of their games, maybe Fischer or Spassky or Karpov, Kasparov, etc. And they have a certain magic, just like World Cups have a certain magic for football. And there's always a couple of games which are just sticking out so heavily because they're just magnificent. And it also just shows how heavy a preparation, even back then in historical times, probably was.
Yeah, exactly. This particular game will come from their 1985 match, so I would say their second match technically.
Hmm.
And all the way up to game 16, the match score was even. So, they were very close, even though they had clashing styles. But every time the matches were so, so, so close, often all the way until the very end. And every single game was very significant.
Hmm.
So we'll look at it from Kasparov's perspective. So he's black, Karpov is white, and it was started out with the Sicilian.
Yeah, I think
So it
I'm not
goes,
sure if it was the time where he was. No, apparently not. But I think that Kasparov was like a big aficionado of the Najdorf, right? Or not?
yeah, he was
Yeah.
a big Sicilian expert, but he has played multiple
Hmm.
Sicilians. This one as well, but you're right about Najdorf too. So we went into the open Sicilian, and it's funny that you mentioned preparation being such a huge factor because it will be a really big factor in this game as well. That really surprised me as to how deep they actually analyzed all of that and how deeply they were both prepared.
Hmm.
So, first of all, just the normal open Sicilian, knight c6. Now, this is the Taimanov Sicilian. And here, knight c3 is the most popular move, but Karpov plays knight to b5. This is also popular, and he really liked this move because Karpov was a big fan of these c2, c4 types of positions. He's a very positional player. He likes to have this slow hold on the opponent's position. So this move kind of leaves that opportunity after d6.
Hmm.
So he puts the pawn onto c4, gaining some more space. Then the knight goes here, the other knight joins, and a6. Now, this knight goes back all the way to a3. So this is sort of, these are the knight placements that we see sometimes in like the Sveshnikov, for example. But here, they're placed like that because it got kicked away. So he wanted to keep both. And here's where the new idea comes. Here, Kasparov came up with a novelty back at the time. He plays d5.
Oh my God.
So that sacrifices the pawn.
Yeah.
And in his notes to this game, usually he says that he found this move on a pocket chess set while he was on a flight. So it's something that he just thought of at some point and then analyzed it and then actually found some really interesting ideas here.
How
So
cool.
do you like this move and do you think the pawn sacrifice is worth it?
Yeah, like I'm guessing, I mean, it's opening up the bishop, which is interesting to perhaps even exchange with the knight on a3. I'm not sure if that's something to look at. But yeah, of course, I guess if you're saying so it was 1985, it's kind of a novelty. That must be a shock for the opponent if you always have your set system. I guess the bishop goes to e7, you're castling at one point and stuff like that, which is the
Yeah.
normal. There's probably a couple of normal moves which everybody always plays. There's the hedgehog.
Yes, the hedgehog from our
Yeah.
last lesson.
Yeah, and out of a sudden, D5 is coming. That must be, yeah, that must be an interesting feeling for the opponent to
Yeah,
witness
yeah,
that. So I'm not sure. I
you're
cannot
right.
tell yet how good it is.
If Kasparov plays it, it means it's good. But no, bishop e7 is the usual and was typical. Now d5 is more of a theoretical move because it's not a novelty anymore.
Hmm.
And also, I would have definitely also looked at bishop a3 because that seems to be one of the goals. But actually, he's gonna want to keep that dark squared bishop as one of the attacking pieces
Yeah,
and keep that knight on a3 as a non-attacking piece and try to restrict it.
keep it on the rim.
So it is about opening up the bishop.
Hmm.
So of course white is going to take that pawn, and well, black is not exactly going to gain it back. So he goes knight to b4, and it does come as a shock, but actually he played this already in game 12 of the match, and this was game 16 of the match. So it's maybe not as much of a shock anymore, but in game 12, this is what happened. Karpov played bishop to c4, bishop g4, and then he thought, okay, he probably didn't want to weaken with f3, so he came back with a bishop, and then at the end of all of this,
A
black
lot of
regained the pawn,
swipsy swapsies.
and black had no difficulties to make a draw. But it is interesting that Kasparov had the courage to repeat this line again and to sacrifice this pawn again. And Karpov's team probably thought how to counter this and came up with the move bishop to e2.
Hmm.
And so no bishop g4 now. So now this bishop comes to c5 just to create some problems and just stand on a good square. And
I see.
in
Okay, sorry. I had to think for a moment. So, okay, the team came up with bishop e2, so there's no bishop g4, so it's not a draw again. Because, of course, white is white, so they have the advantage, and yeah, they will try to.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
It was also later discovered that bishop e3 is a good move and it secures that extra pawn for white because of this really interesting idea, queen to a4. So
Oh.
not even taking back that bishop, but taking back this knight. And at the end of this, oftentimes white gets to keep that extra pawn.
Wow.
But maybe bishop e3 didn't occur
Ooh.
to him, or maybe he didn't evaluate it
Yeah.
as something worthwhile. So instead, he went castles, black castles. And you are right about the psychology of being white, is that he wants an advantage. He doesn't want just a line that's going to do some safe and boring trades. Bishop g5 would have led to that. And, something like this can happen, and they would probably just end up making a draw.
Hmm.
But they've made many draws in their life. They've,
Yeah.
their very first match was like abandoned, postponed when they were just kept playing too many games and none of them could get to 6 wins. Back then, the format was first to 6 wins, and none of them were getting 6 wins after so many games, like 40 something games.
Yeah.
So they've made many draws. They did not want to make a draw again, but of course, even in this match, there were a lot of them as well. But the psychology was that as white, you want to push for it. So he goes bishop to f3. So he wanted maybe to punish Kasparov for repeating that same line with sacrificing a pawn again and wanting to play more than that, for more than that. So now bishop f5 comes out. So you can already see how the restriction starts happening with the white pieces. And even though he is down a pawn, as long as that pawn doesn't go anywhere and as long as black keeps pieces on the board, there's still going to be some compensation for it. Now bishop g5 comes up with the interesting additional threat of bishop to e4. So if white is able to trade that bishop, that would be pretty good news. And for this reason, black
Rook
goes rook
e8.
to e8, controlling that square and to preventing that exchange. Then white went queen to d2, and it might have been better to play knight c4 just to bring that knight back into the game, because after that, it's not going to ever happen when Kasparov goes for this b5 move. So, so far, of course, the position is okay. It's equal. It's just developing pieces for now. But I think you can already see how black's pieces are all on some really, really good squares, and how some restriction will happen. So after rook ad1 would probably be the first moment to think. You can try to look for black's plan or black's move because I really like black's next move. Many of them are good, but this one feels extra good.
Okay, for you at home, of course, the same applies because what we will try to do here when we're watching this, we will try to actively participate and learn something. Yeah, it is very interesting that you're mentioning that black has a good and interesting move here because it feels to me as if this is a position where not much is happening yet.
Yeah, not much is
But
happening yet. It's just more about the plan and how to place all of these pieces.
yeah, okay. So okay. I can see an idea right now because I had it in the very first second, but now it crystallizes a bit more even. So I guess one of the ideas is to get our knight from b4 away to play b4 ourselves. So
Hmm.
my first idea was knight d3, and I thought like, but why should the knight go there? But that actually it is a threat. And if the knight goes to e5, it has a good spot maybe. So yeah, this is one idea.
You're right about knight d3. So this was the move that he played, but for sure b4 is a huge part of it, but this knight is actually gonna be the star of the whole game
Mm-hmm.
because it controls all the
Ah,
squares around it, and this is something that is sometimes called the octopus knight because it has 8 squares that are all attacked, that are all important, and it's just a fun way to call it. And that knight is actually going to be an amazing piece that attacks f2, doesn't allow this rook to come to e1, and just creates problems all around.
uh-huh.
And it's going to be an amazing piece itself. So even despite b4 being a thing, it's just a great piece placement. And what's interesting is that Kasparov had this position already analyzed on the flight. So when he first came up with that move, he went all the way here, and he thought, okay, looks good without any engine computer, just based on his feeling for the position, which
Okay.
means that it was probably very natural to him to play such positions. And maybe if anybody considered bishop to d3 would be another interesting thing, but not as good, because actually white can sacrifice the exchange here with giving up this rook, and white ends up having now taking over the initiative. They have some d6 ideas, and just in general now it's kind of it the tide shifts, and it's white who's going to start to make some threats to have their bishop pair being really strong.
Oh, d6 now I see it. It took a little
Yeah,
moment,
and
but yeah.
it does get super unpleasant. So bishop to d3, trying to attack that would not be the best if white gives it away in a good way.
Mhm.
But yeah, knight d3, you found it, and we have the octopus now on the d3 square. That'll be a really important piece. Now, still d6 was one of white's ideas, and this probably would have been a great moment for white to do that. And Kasparov was intending to just give up that exchange, most likely, and keep playing that position. But white decides to kind of keep that pawn because it holds some of their position together as well. So knight to b1 was played. It ends up being a mistake. Then black plays h6, an important move to drive the bishop back, and ideally, white would want to put the bishop to e3, but that's not very good because of queen b6 idea in the end, and that pawn just starts being super weak. So instead, bishop to h4. So now that bishop is cut off a little bit from the game, and this bishop is going to be uncontested on this really good diagonal.
Hmm.
Then black plays b4, move that we wanted to make for a while. And then the knight has a couple of options. He went to a4, bishop to d6, and this was the position that Black Kasparov was aiming for in his home analysis. So that just shows you the depth of World Championship preparation. This is without computers, and they were, mostly finding these moves on their own, of course, with their teams as well. But I find it amazing that I feel like, half the game has already happened, but it's something that they diligently picked out by analyzing all the alternatives as well.
Hmm.
So this was the position that he was aiming for.
Yeah, nice little threat is probably bishop f4 next. So
Yes,
no,
so
yeah,
bishop
no, yeah,
g3.
it is. Yeah, so bishop g3 is
Yeah,
necessary.
exactly. So it gets defended. Now the rook comes to c8. Just every piece joins, and that's what I love. Once you give Kasparov the initiative, I really like how he starts using it.
Hmm.
And now b3 is what white plays. Of course, it's still not, still nothing is, everything is very far from clear. So b3, white has the idea to play knight to b2, to exchange that knight. And I want you to find Kasparov's continuation. And to me, this was the most interesting move in the game when I first saw the game.
Okay, so the question was knight, how to, what please? How to stop knight going to b2.
No, that's not exactly the question how to stop knight to b2, but it's just what should black play. Knight b2 is
I
kind
see.
of going to be white's next move.
I see, I see, I see.
You can't exactly prevent it, but there's some options of what would be a good move.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sensing a couple of things. So for example, what I see is like if the knight on d3 is not on d3 anymore, the rook has this beautiful spot on c2. Is this already... Can I? No, I cannot do any shenanigans with that yet. But maybe our knight just goes to e5. But that's so boring. So, what else could there be? Hmm. Knight.
Rook c2 is a very good idea
Yeah.
for later. It's good that you notice that as a pattern.
Yeah.
It's useful for later.
Okay. No, I don't think I can spot it yet. You have to please let me know. No, I cannot
Okay,
see
we can
it.
look at a few options as well. So the only way maybe to prevent knight b2 would be bishop to e5, and that's maybe the second best move. Just activating the bishop,
Okay.
not allowing knight b2. And if something like a3, then maybe black just plays a5 and solidifies like that with their better position. Other things, like maybe taking the bishop, are going to lead to knight b2 later. And the same thing with a couple of other options. Knight e4 is a decent move. Bishop g3 is a decent move. A5 is a good move. But the best move, and the one that Kasparov played in the game that really impressed me, was g5. The reason why this move is so amazing is because it indirectly prevents knight to b2. If that happens, then they're going to take g4. The bishop has to retreat to e2, and now we use your rook c2 idea to win that bishop.
Oh, sneaky.
Yeah, it is. See,
Wow.
it's not so complicated if you were
No,
given
of
the
course, yeah.
tactic of find how to win right from here, but it's finding that g5 move that's kind of
Yeah,
a bit not what we're used to doing
that's
in
crazy.
such a position. But I really love this move, and it's perfectly safe.
Yeah, that's a move of deep, deep strategic understanding. Crazy.
Yes, for sure. So it's knowing when you can weaken the king and when you
Mm.
can't. And in this case, you can. There's no pieces around it. So the bishop takes here, queen takes back, and white goes g3. Here, once again, there's a few ways, but you can try to find a way to increase pressure on the white's position.
Okay. Um. I mean, we. What happens if we take the pawn on d5? Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, you can take the pawn on d5.
Oh no,
Even better,
I am
probably
missing
with
something.
g4, starting with g4 and then knight d5.
Yeah, but then when the bishop takes back and the queen takes back, the knight can go to b6, right?
Oh, yeah, yes, it can.
Yeah.
But I assume it should still be a good position for black
Yeah.
if we ever get these squares. I actually think that should be that should be great for black because the queen and the bishop are gonna be together,
You
and
might be right. So
I just feel like there's no defense against the checkmate, but
you're right. You're right.
there could be something. But this is I would think winning for black as well.
So we will
Um,
try to get the bishop, which is there away. So how about just simply bishop e4 doesn't really work.
yeah, but
Mm,
g4 is also a great move with the idea of just taking that pawn.
yeah. What about what about bishop h3?
Okay, bishop h3, probably bishop back to g2. They
Then
will
we
play.
take, and then the queen takes d5 with
It
check.
looks. Oh, actually, wait. What am I saying? The knight is hanging on d3.
Yeah, pardon. That was my
No, I,
fault.
I
You're
I
right.
was like, oh yeah, that's pretty good if we
That's
were
not
able to get that
bad.
bishop off.
Why?
But then I
How did they
remembered that the
miss
knight
that?
is
That is
hanging. That's
so
true.
good. No,
Yeah.
good you spotted that. Okay, so then here's my last attempt, and I love this idea so much, and I probably would go for it. Knight f4.
Oh wow, knight f4. Okay. I did not see it before.
So of course I would like the white to take, and we take back
Right.
with the pawn.
And you want to play rook c2?
Rook c2, but my main idea was king h7 and rook g8.
King h7. No, that is
No, no,
really
no.
cool, but if we were gonna do that, why not start with, I don't know, king h8 or something and then play knight f4?
That's a
Because
good point.
then because then you kind of prepare it a bit more. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
you're
think
right.
this
You're right.
gives white a little bit too much time um to start doing other things.
Yeah,
And
it's. I
that
mean,
knight is,
it was a bit drastic. I agree. Okay,
but
you're
no,
right. No, so what?
it
So
had the potential. It almost traps the queen. Rook c2 almost traps the queen, but
yeah.
there's queen d4. So it almost works.
Yes. Yeah.
But
Okay. And
it is about the knight, actually. So what Kasparov ended up playing and what really ended up being a really good maneuver later is knight to d7.
oh,
So that other knight can join maybe through e5 so nicely so that both of them are actually in the game and
mm-hmm.
taking over on in the center and on both sides of the board. So here, after knight to b2, this is always kind of the threat that that black has to look at. There's a beautiful tactical idea of queen to f6. And what do you think happens after knight d3?
Well, now our rook goes to c2. No, apparently
Not
not.
quite, actually. Knight d3 has something much simpler than that.
So we just take back, and our knight goes to e5.
Exactly. And the reason why it's so beautiful is because the queen is actually trapped. So
Oh
it's not like we're just gaining back the piece
goodness.
on f3, is that the queen has no squares and we
That's
win the queen.
nasty.
If it goes
Wow.
to the e file, the knight f3 wins the queen. If it goes anywhere, well, it cannot really go anywhere else
Yeah,
because then knight f3 wins the queen anyways. So
that's cool.
it's right in the middle of the board, but it actually would have gotten trapped. So this was a really nice tactical idea.
Hmm.
And Karpov in the game went bishop to g2. Now queen f6, still good move, putting the queen there to prevent knight b2 from happening, and this knight is going to stay stuck there forever. And I don't know about you, I've never seen, like, Karpov is such an amazing player, but it's so rare to see him so helpless and have no moves
True.
and have nothing to do.
Absolutely.
So a3 is what he plays. That just solidifies with a5, captures, and you don't really know what to play for white. Anything you do is going to work against you. So he plays queen to a2 to free up some space for the knight, perhaps, knight d2. And now bishop to g6, also another nice idea, with the idea that if knight d2 now, well, then rook e2. And that frees up the attack on the f2 square. So d6, he plays as white, but Kasparov doesn't even take that pawn. He plays g4.
I need to. I'm so sorry. We have to go back to knight to no rook to e2, the position you
Yeah.
were just showing, because I need to know what happens after knight e4, please.
Yeah, so here we can calculate rook to a2, and I think like this would be up a piece because this bishop is still out here
It's
protecting.
still protected. Sorry. Yeah,
Yes.
perfect. Okay, thank you. That's all
Yeah,
I
no,
needed.
no,
I
sounds
saw
good.
taking with the check, and I thought like it's possible, but we just take back. Easy.
Yes, yes. No,
Easy.
it's just tough to see that this bishop is still actually there
Okay.
and protects everything. So yeah, should be up a piece for everybody. But it's really this bishop to g6 move that freed up this attack on f2. Otherwise,
Yes.
this wouldn't have been as good, and the rook can get kicked away. So
Complex. My God.
yeah, so it is every single move makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
once we see it. So now d6, just freeing up, just playing any move
Yeah.
to free up white's pieces. g4, he continues restricting with king g7, and then at this point Karpov played f3 out of frustration. Of course, that weakens the white king, but also there was no other plan that his pieces could possibly do because all of them were tied. So he tries to open up the game with f3. But that doesn't change much of the outcome because queen d6 and queen to d4 already puts white king into serious trouble. And now when having these positions, it's easy to kind of start looking for the checkmate threats, how to win material or anything like that. But actually, I like that Kasparov just stayed calm, brought another piece into the game with knight to f6, and and then to e4. So eventually, there was nothing better for white to do than just to play queen to d3, and I'm sure you see the final tactic that he went for
I
at the end of
guess.
all.
Yes. So I guess we take back on.
You could take back, but even better.
There's even
There's
better.
even better.
So we just give a check on f2 in this case.
Yeah, yeah. Check on f2. Of course, white doesn't want to get smothered. Like white doesn't want to play king to g1 in that case. So rook takes, bishop d3, and after this, maybe if the situation was different and there was some interesting imbalance with three pieces for the queen, it could have been different, but not in this case because the white king is just too weak. And there's many ways to win, but Kasparov chose an elegant one with rook to c1. And basically the rooks are tied to
That's
each
so
other.
cool,
Otherwise, there's
actually.
Hmm?
That is so cool, this
Yeah,
move.
I like that one as well. So if this, then rook to d1 happens, and then rook e3, too much material. And if knight to b2, which is what ended up happening in the game, then he simply plays queen to f2, leaves the rook hanging, but that's still not enough because of rook to e1 in the end. So
Wow.
this was an amazing World Championship game, very historic one, and I like bringing them back sometimes to learn some of these concepts. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the game and learned something new from it.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Svitlana. It's always nice to have an insight about those classics as well. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon.